7 o'clock, we are going to call to order. We'll start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll do roll call.
Miss Bollenbacher?
Here.
Present. Mr. Chandler? Here. Miss Compatello?
Here.
Mr. Hof? Here. Miss Pokalnik?
Here.
Mr. Oliverio is absent. Mr. Rodella? Here. Celeste Corbo? Here. Engineer Keenan? Here. And myself. We have a quorum.
And Mayor Perry is in attendance.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the approval of council meeting minutes from October 10th, the bill list from October 24th, and the September reports, the manager's report, mayor's report, police report, the CEDD report, the building inspector's report, the VFD report, and the library report, which are on the Council OneDrive. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. We'll go on to public comments on agenda items. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. The solicitor is the assigned timekeeper, and please state your name and physical address for the record. So we'll start with those in the room. Is there anyone who has signed in?
Nobody signed in.
Any comments on agenda items?
Oh.
Is there anyone online with comments on agenda items?
Oh. Don't see any hands raised.
All right, well, we will move on with the president's report. President is not able to be in attendance tonight. I do not have any updates for him. Are there any updates on his behalf?
Nope.
Okay. We'll move on to the mayor's report.
Yes, the only thing I have tonight is to say that we're getting closer to the finish line on the chief's search, and we're hoping to be making an offer to one of our final candidates in the next week or so. Also that there is currently an open application for the police exam. I believe that applications can be gotten at the Borough building, also online. And I think that that is open, Jim. I don't have it right in front of me. The I think it's November up through November 1st, I think it is.
I don't have it in front of me either. I think it's the 7th. It's the 7th.
It's the 7th. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so those are really the only two things I have to report tonight. So I'll pass it on to the next person.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the solicitor's report.
Just a quick announcement that we will be holding an executive session following the meeting to discuss personnel matters. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the engineer's report, which is a bit longer. Over to you.
All right. Thank you. Good evening. The first item is the Broadhead Sewer Project. Right now, EPA is currently reviewing all the documents in which we had submitted to them, including the project plan, specs, bid docs. There was also been some online environmental compliance checks done, which had come back and forwarded off to them as well for their approval. Waiting for their feedback on that. Still nothing, but at this time, no red flags. Next is the stairs project. No major updates here. The contractor for our excavation, still waiting for a response from their sub, who is doing the custom fabrication on the handrails, which is the last item to be put in place for this to be finished. Hoping to have more of a time frame for you by next meeting.
Is it normal for it to take that long to hear from? There's,
Man, I've been doing my best to
Yeah.
coordinate with
No,
them, but
yeah, I meant them, not you. I mean, is that? Okay,
probably not typically.
okay.
Are these the?
I think it's
handrails
just
that
they don't-
were on back order?
Sorry, what?
Are these the handrails that were back on back order? also?
No, I think this is regarding the handrails for the Crafton to Walnut portion that haven't been put in place yet and are still being fabricated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these handrails are custom fabrication, take a long time to do, so they may not have much to say, it's still getting them done.
Gotcha.
Moving on to the road paving program, again, this has been done for about 2 months now, but an update regarding Locust Street, which was scheduled to be paved, but at the time of the paving, experienced an unforeseen water main break. Recent talk with them, the American Water, they told me that they have plans to replace the entire water main for that street, scheduled for the end of next year, possibly early in 26. But as a result, they will end up repaving the entire street as part of that work. Moving on, more PA American Water talk with their water main replacements that they have been doing over the course of the summer. The latest updates are regarding the brick road restoration that needs to be done. I've been talking with Solente Construction, who's the contractor that will be doing this work. And the latest update is that he gave me a list of the priority areas that will be done. One is North Grandview. That was listed as soon as possible by the water company, so they will be taking that on first. Followed by Clearview Avenue and Union Avenue, which is expected to possibly carry over into next year. Next, moving on to the trail feasibility study. There has been a community recruitment post out for a few weeks now for members of the community to submit their request to be a part of the committee. Right now we have, I think we're listed at 18 people who have submitted, so getting good feedback from the community. And I think that goes till the second week in November. So if people out there still want to be a part of it, they still have time.
And that application is on the website?
I believe it's at least so, yes.
Yep, and we put
Yeah.
it out on Savvy and on
Yeah.
Facebook.
And the status of the RFP to get a consultant that's been prepared, but it is not yet out.
Correct, no,
Waiting.
part of we have to upload a list of the members for the committee before we can send it out, so the RFP can go out.
Okay, so if we close the applications in November and do a selection process, then we're looking at a RFP out by the end of this year.
Yes, I would agree. And, Jim, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, we haven't decided, council hasn't really given me direction on who's selecting the
Mhm.
committee. So, and planning commission has asked us, are they selecting the committee or is council selecting the committee? So, I guess that's a question for you right now. Who would you like to be selecting the committee for this?
How many people, is there a certain number that is
We-
ideal? I mean,
Well, we had suggested 10.
Okay.
We did get a comment at the last meeting from James that he thought that was too low of a
okay,
number. I don't think you want it to be
Yeah.
no limit. I think that's gonna be difficult to handle in the other direction. I think maybe 14 or 16, but I wouldn't do any more than that. So
How have committees like this been chosen in the past and what's like standard precedent for size?
I think standard precedent for size is 10 to 16 people, 10 to 15 is probably pretty common for a steering committee. President of who selects it, both of those bodies have in organizations have selected it, in my experience. So it really is. It's, it is probably more of a planning centered thing, so maybe allowing the planning commission to make the choices better, but either one.
I think what was done a few years ago perhaps was the planning commission, I think. Perhaps the closest. Similar process was the master site plan. And I'd have to go back to how that was handled then. I wasn't part of it at the beginning, but I want to say it was maybe a planning commission recommendation and then council approved the steering committee members, which is a way we could go. I would think that it seems like a planning commission.
My one
option.
concern is, planning commission's kind of really busy right now with the zoning project.
Yeah,
If we want to move fairly fast on this, I'm not sure if they have the bandwidth to do that. I don't know, is it usually interviews for the?
I wouldn't think interviews, I would think just getting the responses that because they provided some information in that thing and making a choice based on that. But it's up to you guys.
I know they're also looking, I guess, are looking for an independent solicitor, so that's gonna be interviews. So they might be a little bit taxed, that's my only concern.
so typically things like this also would have a like some kind of criteria, which can be fairly low, but you want kind of a mix of, you know, people from different parts of the neighborhood, different types of experience, people who use the trail, people who have different, you know, ages, mobility needs, that kind of thing. So it could be that we do a bit of research to find a few examples and pick some that we like at next time. It could also be perhaps something that the vacancy committee takes a first stab at coming up with some, like, you know, overall target of what kind of mix of ages or, you know, experiences and types of expertise might be wanted. That could be an approach. It's true, we hadn't really talked about this before.
Yep.
But I'm sure if we want to go with it being, you know, all of council first, or planning commission first, or vacancy committee first, or the infrastructure committee first, maybe the first step is to, you know, look at a few other examples and come up with a list of, you know, how many people do we think we should target, and what are some, you know, criteria that we'd like in terms of, you know, range of ages or ranges of abilities, type, something like that. And then we can review from there.
So, so we're gonna do some research on what best practices are and bring it back to the next meeting, is that?
Well, I think that seems to be, I think we all seem to be on board with that. And then the second piece is, do we want it to just come back to council next, or do we want it to go to one of the committees next?
Yeah.
And then have that committee bring it to council?
Well, council meets before the next, unless infrastructure is the committee, which it might, maybe it should be. So, okay,
I mean, as someone who's on the infrastructure committee, I could say that I can put it on that committee to do some research and pull together some examples
Okay.
to bring to council next time.
okay. Sounds good. And that makes sense too, because Larry's on that committee too, so. Okay. All you.
Alrighty, moving on. The Public Works Building, things are pretty much status quo at this time with this project. Sanitary sewer lateral work. Did. Had a pre-bid meeting with some possible contractors on the 15th. The bids will be open on November 5th. The remaining build out work is also moving forward with the project. Next is the C20 sewer separation project. Tonight we have a small presentation from Gateway to give a brief review and summary of the project for everyone.
Are you guys, are you doing the presentation of the separation project first?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Okay, hello everyone. Want to introduce the folks here tonight and their functions in these projects, and first clarify that there are two C20 projects, and they're gonna try to differentiate those for you so that people who keep hearing C20 knows what that means. Scott Baker is the project manager.
Oh, is that-
the-
Is that mic on? Is it got a red light or a green light on the screen? If you pull it out and look at the screen on the, is it red or green?
What screen?
Red.
Oh, it's green now.
Okay, so first is Scott Baker is the project manager for the C20 separation project. He is managing the work associated with constructing this project and finalizing the design specifications in the bid documents. He actually designed the Linden portion of the project, the PM for the Linden portion. I was the PM for the Duncan portion. He'll explain those. Also with us tonight is Liam Hodgson. Liam is a design engineer. He's worked on both projects. And so he's into the weeds and the nitty gritty, just in case anybody really wants a detailed question. He can help with that. And he wanted to come and see how this stuff works. Next is Craig Jubic. Craig is the project manager for the C20 GSI projects. And those are the green stormwater infrastructure projects, and he'll be talking about those. So like I said, two C20 projects. I'll have Scott come up first. We'll talk about the separation project.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Rick. So first, it's been several months, I guess, since you guys have heard about C20. So we got asked to come back, give a little bit of presentation, a little bit of background on the projects. As we are moving forward here through bidding and future in construction. So purpose of this, any community that flows to Alcosan, they're put under a consent order, which you're required to remove flows from their plant. So obviously Crafton, we have a combined sewer system here. So what that means is all of the sanitary sewer and the stormwater that's collected in the inlets goes into the same pipe, goes to Alcosan. Now, the C20, while that's the project, there's a reason behind it. So as you see on the handout that I gave you, so there's a magenta line here that comes up along Chartiers Creek. The line, the combination line that runs down West Steuben Street goes down to the Alcosan interceptor. And that interceptor, that's what takes the flow and takes it to Alcosan's plant. That is called, it's the point of connection C20. Also in that same location is the CSO C20, which is the overflow. So as the flows get higher and come through there, they have to go somewhere. It can't all go through the pipe. It comes out, overflows, and which goes into Chartiers Creek. So why this is called C20, that's a little bit of brief background on why it's C20. It's because of those structures that are there. So also, the purple area that you see on the map here, that is the C20 sewer shed, the project area that was evaluated. Now, there's multiple different ways to comply with the consent order to reduce the flows to go to Alcosan. One we have for my project here is to completely separate the flows from the combination line. Now, we've obviously had some past projects, 4 or 5 projects recently in Crafton that we've done similar projects. This one's no different. As Rick stated, he was part of the design for the Duncan Steuben. So that is the red line, which starts in front of, the park, runs down, collects inlets, larger diameter pipe, goes down Duncan Avenue, and we connect into Maxwell, which is an existing 72-inch storm sewer. Linden, next to it, it starts actually up at the cemetery parking lot. We're adding inlets there, large diameter pipe coming down West Steuben, turns down Linden, again, make a connection into Maxwell. The line we are tying into Maxwell, 72 inches, been evaluated to take all these flows. That is a dedicated storm sewer. So it's going to take all the clean water that we have. And as you can see on the plan, it discharges to Chartiers Creek, close to where the overflows are in the interceptor. But again, we are taking all clean water over there, taking it out of the system. So a few benefits, just a few other words here. So all these storm sewers are within the public right of way. We do not have to acquire any easements. There are options that we did. We steered away from those. Found this is the best option. So no acquisition of easements, getting on private property. We did increase inlets along West Steuben Street, along with the increase in inlets, the inlet boxes to accept a larger diameter pipe are a lot bigger. Obviously, the pipes are bigger, which allows for more capacity for water to get into and get the water out as fast as we can. We're estimating calculated that the average yearly flows in this area are 14.8 million gallons per year. You know, that the flow is now going to be directed to Chartiers Creek instead of through Alcosan's plant. We had studied the flow path, confirmed the existing has a capacity again on Maxwell. We're also estimating that approximately 7.5 million gallons is going to come out of that overflow system. We also have PennDOT approval already. We have the permit in place to do this work along West Steuben. So that is in place. As far as like mechanical equipment for the O&M purposes, there's no mechanical equipment. There's no underground tanks. There's the maintenance of this system is pretty minimal. Clearing leaves and such as we would for any other inlet storm system throughout the community. So it's going to keep costs down. And then also, we didn't have to, you know, property owners didn't have to remove downspouts and gutters on their property. So we didn't have to put that burden on the community to be able to do that. So all that stuff can stay as is. We still get a high function of this project. Obviously, you know, Alcosan CNIT is the same. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at now. Bidding wise, we're currently wrapping up bid docs here in the next couple of weeks. We anticipate advertising the beginning of November. We plan on opening bids mid-December with a recommendation to Borough Council by the first meeting in January. Once we go through that, roughly beginning mid-February, we would have notice to proceed to the contractor. Construction start end of February into March, which is a good alignment with asphalt plants opening up. So as they're doing this work and backfilling, we can get asphalt back down the roads, no stone. And then we're anticipating anywhere 4, 5 to 8 months of construction. So it's mostly on Steuben, utilities, the poles, the depth, the size of the pipe, but that's kind of where we're at with the project.
During those months of construction, is it going to close the roads? Is it going to be like done in phases with portions at a time? How would that phasing work?
So along Steuben, they will be taking up a lane, but it won't be the entire length of the project. So it's only in their work areas. So they'll section off areas of where they're actively working. Traffic control, they'll have flaggers and that meeting all the PennDOT criteria for traffic control in those areas, and they'll just move those areas as they continue to work.
So it would stay two-way traffic.
It'll be at least, yeah,
Traffic control.
traffic, yes.
And then on the side streets?
It would be the same. They would have traffic control up, being able to block, you know, there may have to be some pause one lane depending on where they're at. But they will have traffic control. And again, it's in accordance with PennDOT specs. We have to meet their requirements. It is no different for the borough's roads.
The Linden and Duncan sections that are on Steuben Street, would those be done all as one section, like digging up Steuben all at once, not breaking it up into two separate?
That's kind of be up to the contractor.
Okay.
Kind of, it's a means and methods thing of how they would separate this project. Typically, when we do these, you want to start at the downstream end and work your way up.
Okay.
Rather than working up and down, because you miss an elevation or something, you
Okay.
have a known point you have to connect to. So you have to be able there. So typically you start downstream and work your way up. But as far as if it's just all Steuben, that would
Okay.
be left up to the contractor. We would obviously get a schedule. We would give that to the borough, which they can announce it to the community. That way they're aware of when these closures would happen.
This will be a pretty big announcement.
Mhm.
Like, this isn't just us, this is all neighboring communities. That's-
Yeah,
That
yeah.
just traffic even.
well, if it's on PennDOT roads, that will be announced through PennDOT too.
Yes.
So they have a method, Ken Buckley, we usually get messages from him pretty regularly, and so he'll get notice of this. We'll make sure he has notice, and he'll send that out as well, because it's a state route,
Mhm.
it'll be notified more broadly.
Yeah.
But we'll also, I mean, there's other projects going on, so Larry and I will make sure that, you know, what we can do with the contractor if we need to make sure that if we can talk to them and have them do a section first, because maybe a piece of Broadhead is gonna conflict, or maybe the Green Light Go installation is happening or something like that, we'll do our best to try to navigate and make it as lessen the disruption as much as possible.
Seems like it's definitely gonna be the front page story for our winter newsletters. What it's.
Probably, yeah.
I'm remembering the gas line replacement that happened a few years ago down there, and it was much talked about and complained about.
Okay.
Nobody likes construction.
And I'm sure we'll have more, I'm sure there'll be more details about the exact, timings and phasing, et cetera, as this gets closer, but
Yeah.
we're just thinking in advance here. 48 months, is a pretty long period. So presumably it wouldn't actually be closed for long periods. There'd be ongoing work, but only small pieces would be closed at a time. But we'll
Yes.
certainly have to think through access, because there are some properties on there that have,
Yeah, and
access from the road.
yeah, and the contractor will be required to provide access to any business resident, whoever is there. They're gonna be required, it's in their contract to make sure that they maintain a clear point of access for anybody to access their property.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so I'll Craig's coming up next, so that's the other portion that's within the C20, so which is up in the Oregon area, so of the C20.
But we want to actually do a motion on this one first,
Okay,
before we move to Craig.
okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Touching base on what Scott said regarding the bid schedule, we did receive a bid schedule for this project, and we can go out to bid as early as next Thursday. With that said, I'd like to ask can I have a motion to approve going out to bid with the C20 sewer separation project at the estimated cost of $2,747,984.
So moved. Second. No, don't push it.
No, don't push it.
Who seconded?
Second.
Oh, okay. Who first? Oh, okay,
Me.
sorry. Okay. Got it.
Can you repeat that number again? A little slower?
$2,747,984.
And keep in mind that,
Estimated cost.
yep, thank you. That includes the inspection cost. And that includes the paving cost which will come out of different sources. They're not all gonna come from the same source. So while that's the whole number, we're gonna be pulling it out of some different funds.
And that was a part of the budget conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Yep, okay.
All right, any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Oh, any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And with that said, we will now move on to the other portion of the C20 projects, the green infrastructure. Presented by Craig from Gateway.
Thanks, Larry. So as Larry and Rick mentioned, I'm Craig Jubic from Gateway. Kind of went through the GSI design on this as part of the C20 overall source reduction with Scott. And just wanted to kind of give like a brief, explanation as to what the GSI cells actually are. So it's basically green street stormwater infrastructure, which means that it's like low impact, kind of small footprint. It's not intended to be like big facilities. It's taking a lot of the smaller frequent storms offline. But they do get inundated with larger storms because those are not the intent for them to handle that. So the one thing that we looked at with this too was the cost per gallon of runoff removed for all of this. So as Scott had mentioned, when we were looking at the entire C20 watershed, as well as the separation projects and how they fit into the GSI areas, we were looking for different combinations of how we could get the GSIs to work along with the separations to meet the overall reduction. So one thing that we kind of considered up through a lot of the residential neighborhoods, because there are a lot of brick roadways up through there, that doing any type of like storm sewer conveyance system to separate your combo sewer would be very high cost for taking up brick, replacing it. And then the other part of that too was when we looked at the specific area, you can see on the screen there in that plan, up along Dakota Street, Lincoln, Montana, and Oregon. There's really no inlets up through that neighborhood at all. So the only opportunity for all of that surface runoff is it flows down to Steuben Street. And when it gets to Steuben Street in those existing inlets, it's entering a combined system anyway. So in order to do like a purely separation project up through here, you would have to further extend like a dedicated storm sewer all the way down Steuben, basically to where Scott's project was starting at. So we looked at that, just knowing that the cost for that could be 5 to 10 times what these smaller footprint GSIs were going to be. And then with these GSI locations, so we really did some due diligence on this of the actual neighborhood that we were looking to place these in. So we went out and we walked multiple neighborhoods. We looked at and reviewed the drainage areas, existing roof leader disconnect, and what was connected underground to the combo sewer. Because like I said, since there are no inlets within the roadway, we could only disconnect what was like visible from the surface. And we can only get surface runoff into those GSI cells. So the other consideration that we had was that the GSIs, similar to what Scott had mentioned about the separation project, is everything that the GSIs are doing with on those locations up there, which, by the way, there's 5 of them along, I think that's Oregon on the far east side, and then 2 on Montana and 2 on Dakota. So they do not have any private property impacts. There was no right-of-way easement acquisition, anything required for those as well. Everything's going to be strictly in the public right-of-way. And one thing I'll talk about a little bit more on the next slide when we get there is about utility impacts too. But there was other consideration with that as well. So the other thing with the GSIs is we looked at existing street parking through these areas, and we didn't want to impact street parking. So we looked to basically cluster them in specific areas so they weren't sporadically spaced, just one along each street, and they were more centralized. So with that too, that helps ultimately in the long run with the construction mobilization costs and overall neighborhood impacts as well. The other thing that we looked at on these initial neighborhoods is we looked further west down Steuben along Richmond, and then we looked further east along Noble Avenue as well. So we initially had other conceptual designs in those areas, but we ultimately decided to enhance these specific GSI sections by deepening up the soil media in there and providing more ability for them to control stormwater for what the other ones were we were taking away, so that there were less of these throughout the community. And also, you know, with this too, it reduced overall earth disturbance and, like I said, like just overall disruption to the neighborhood. The other consideration that we had, which was part of the grant application, is going back and forth with Alcosan and their engineer. We had to do infiltration testing out at all these pit locations. And essentially, just to kind of explain what infiltration testing is you go out at these locations and you have to dig a pit down to where your proposed bottom is going to be. And you have to do a percolation test and measure the drawdown on it to ensure that they do infiltrate, because Alcosan does want to see that as part of the application as well. Go ahead to the next slide. So on the next slide there, what I wanted to kind of show was just a more zoomed in area of one of these roadways. And one thing to kind of mention with this too is we also evaluated the critical fire rescue paths. So we looked at aerial fire trucks similar to the ones that Crafton currently use. And we ran them past the fire chief, and he was okay with the model and asked for a couple minor revisions that we intend to address, but there was really no major issues or concerns that he had. So you can kind of see at the top there, I have a plan view, and then down below is a profile of what they look like subsurface. So really on the surface, you see a little bit of curbing. There will be some landscaping we'll look at too. But really the bang for your buck is really what's below surface there. There's a deeper section of soil media plus aggregate. So a few other design considerations that we really looked at with this to just make sure that, you know, we were addressing all potential concerns and, you know, that we didn't foresee any issues with these are, like I said, when we considered the street parking locations, the one thing that we tried to do was break these GSIs up into specific lengths, which you can see the labels on there, the 39, 40 feet or so. We didn't want them too long or too continuous, where if you're parked on the other side of the street, you would have an encumbrance that you would have to walk around to get to your sidewalk or to your residence or to your driveway. So that was one design consideration that we took, you know, pretty seriously. And when we went out and looked at the neighborhoods, we documented all that stuff and made sure we had it on our survey when we were designing these things. The other design consideration was for the cartway width, which essentially the cartway width is going to be the roadway width from face of curb to face of curb. So when you look at those GSI sections or those GSI cells, we considered that cartway, the existing sidewalk, the existing green strip that's provided between the sidewalk and the curb. And we were still providing 20-foot cartway with a 4-foot sidewalk so that we didn't have to further push things back toward the private properties by keeping all of that intact. The GSIs, so they only extend about 2 feet into that cartway. Whereas in comparison to when we were looking at Crafton Boulevard, you know, those ones are a little bit more substantial, like 8 or 9 feet kind of bumped out with parking. But these are a lot smaller, kind of low impact, like I had mentioned earlier as well. The other thing I kind of mentioned already was for those existing driveways. So you can kind of see through there just on that example that there's 2 or 3 driveways in through there that we tried to provide transitions away from them and not provide anything like directly in front of those driveways just to keep them clear. Just knowing that, you know, backing out or pulling in, you need sight distance. If there's somebody walking there, if it's late at night, it's dark, just those type of design considerations. The other thing too, really the biggest thing that we looked at to try to improve these as well are utility impacts. So you can see on there, you know, kind of where Larry's pointing there, that one there specifically has a gas lateral through it, which we show on the details and on the plans, like they will have to be sleeved through there. But if you look further to the left side of the plan there, you can see where the other laterals are, and we tried to cut them short and basically avoid those conflicts, as well as any like valves on the sidewalks or existing utility poles or, you know, anything of that sort. So we went back through the second time and kind of pared these down too, because we had more significant impacts at first, but then we really reduced this with keeping that in mind. And then the other thing I want to note just on this plan too is not so much that the grading or anything on there is really important, but these areas are not, you know, they're not going to impound water and like back them up into the property. They're intended with curb cuts to take that flow from the curb gutter and get it offline and treat it and either infiltrate it or get it back into the system. So if nothing else, it's actually helping stormwater along these roads where there's no existing
underground infrastructure with inlets, I should say. So if you want to go to the next plan. The next plan just shows a little bit of what we put into considerations with landscaping on this too. So we obviously wanted something in there that was going to be, attractive to the neighborhood, something that the residents would, it wouldn't be like a nuisance to look at, or it, something that they really wouldn't want to see, or it'd be blooming. So we took other examples and tried to mix them up and give a little bit different variety through there. And we aim to keep some of the landscaping a lot smaller, at like 2 to 3 feet in height, and same in spread, just so they don't grow up, too high that you can't see. Being that they're low maintenance, just overall performance of them too, with native species all through there. So I think we show 5 or 6 different options on there that, it could be switched up, but I think between them all, it gives, a nice look to the GSI and in the neighborhood in the end. And then if you want to go to the last slide in there. So I just kind of threw this in too, because I wanted to just kind of highlight, what these GSIs look like complete. And just to note, as part of what we're doing here for this grant application, several other boroughs in Western PA are doing this as well. This is from Bellevue Borough. They've done this a few years back. It's very simple, very small. It's very, compact there. It's trimmed up. There's not too much going on with it there, that like it still performs its function. It has curb cuts, it takes water in, it infiltrates it. It functions as it's intended to. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that too, just because this isn't really anything new to the area. They're doing it in a lot of different places, and it's for the grow grants as well. So with that being said, that's really all I have on the GSIs. If you guys have any questions.
So you said the curb is being moved for these about 2 feet. Some of the curbs in that location are pretty low, or you'll be building new curbs along all of these stretches that have this installed, right? These will all be
Just where they're installed, yes.
okay.
It'll be new curb where you see it there on the plan, where they tie in to that existing grade curb. And then the existing gray that will remain.
How is that handled when the existing curb is very low or very close to the brick roadway? Because that is a condition along some of those stretches.
I think there's going to have to be somewhat of a transition between the two. Sometimes when we go from concrete curb to wedge curb, there's some type of nose down that you have to do, or you have to match existing, because in all scenarios we can't put in new curb for everything. But I think in some of those locations too, the actual curb cuts that we have are naturally at those tie-in points or close to them, because that's where the curb, gutter flows. So I think that transition will be a little bit easier than going existing, shallow curb to, full 6-inch reveal in a lot of those locations.
Are any of the sidewalks needing to be replaced as part of this, or do these just tie into the existing sidewalks along those stretches?
They just tie into it. The original intent with this and the way we're still moving forward is, as you can see on the plan there, we're showing a curb that goes around the backside. The curb is intended to be flush with the sidewalk there. So it's going to provide the sidewalk a little bit more support, rather than just undermining it there. But consideration was, taken for all those areas to maintain existing and not have to replace it all and not change width.
Are there any trees that have to be removed, or are these locations avoiding? There aren't a ton, but there are some trees on these blocks. I'm not sure if they are impacted by any of these or not.
I think when we look through it, the only 2 that were impacted were on Dakota Street. I don't believe there was any at the other locations.
So the 2 on Dakota Street would be removed? That's
They
the
would be
location.
removed, but essentially kind of coordinated with the borough to be either replaced somewhere or moved, not just, removed and thrown away.
Is that possible? We can take out a grown tree and relocate it?
Only if it's of a certain size. Yeah, most likely you're just gonna replant you're gonna take those out and replant a tree. Yeah,
They look like decently sized trees,
yeah, then they're not gonna be,
also growing up into the
Yes.
power lines.
yeah, they're not gonna be. Those are not gonna be
It's
removed.
the power line.
If they're bigger than 15, 20 feet, they're not gonna be.
What do you think like that?
30-foot tall tree, look at that.
So when the GSIs catch the water, where does the water go then? Just seeps into the ground slowly? Or,
Yeah, so the intent with them is with the curb cuts. The curb gutter flows into them. And the section that we have on them has about 3 inches of a ponding depth.
okay,
So they're not super deep on top. So it's not a big depression that you would see or, visibly step into like a 12 or 18-inch hole. But then down below that, we have, I believe it's 12 to 18 inches of soil media.
okay,
And then 12 to 18 inches of aggregate with a perforated pipe down below that. So there's adequate storage in the subsurface area there, which is intended to get a lot of it from the surface down there, so you don't necessarily see it. You'll see a little bit of ponding just until it perks down into that media.
okay, and they just pipe, that tie into the sewer system or?
There is an overflow that would tie back into the combo sewer, just in case they would not dewater or they would get too inundated for that.
Okay,
But the other provision that we have on these two is we have multiple curb cuts so that if the flow comes into it and it comes in too fast with a more high intense storms, similar to what we've been getting recently, if the GSI can't take it all, then it's going to overflow and come back out the lowest curb cut on the other end of it, because it's not intended to take all of it.
okay,
So it's not putting any additional runoff back into the street or the curb gutter. It's just putting it back to where it was, but it's taking some of the runoff offline.
okay. And all these streets are uneven brick streets. Are there concerns about like the old brick streets? Cause then water may not flow as nicely as it would flow on like an asphalt street.
Well, the thing that we looked at with that is when we got survey on it, we got detailed shots along curb line, center line. When we looked at and placed these things, we went through very detailed grading on this to ensure that the proposed curb line will push water and there won't be low spots where the curb bumps out.
Okay.
And if in those locations where the curb does bump out, that's generally where we do have the curb cut to take the flow into it.
Okay, thank you.
You talked about parking on Oregon, for example, that's up there right there on that. There's not parking on that side of the street currently, is there?
No.
It is
None of
only on
these-
the other side of the
None of
street,
these are proposed on.
on areas that are currently parking. Perfect.
But all these roads, they are two-way, correct?
Yes.
So you have parking on one side. Road. Bump out. That makes things narrower for people to navigate those roads.
A little bit. They're pretty minor bump outs and those roads have enough space. You said those roads are oversized, so.
No,
said they're
no, I
still
wouldn't say they're
20-foot cartway?
oversized. I would say that,
Well,
I-
I mean.
no, I mean,
They
I would
it
say
still has a 20-foot cartway.
it's a 20-foot cartway, but that's not typically big enough for two-way traffic with parking.
So that's not including the parking. That's not outside the parking lane. It's not
Exactly.
20
Currently,
feet of
it's a-
driving lane. It's
Right.
20 feet with the parking lane.
Cart width, not cart width includes the
With-
parking lane. So you're
So that's
basically,
tight.
yep, it is tight.
Tight.
And they're basically now people have to, if two big vehicles come down the road, they have to, one has to pull over while the other one comes through.
It's like West Street. It's like Division Street. so
Yep.
it's like that.
Yep. So that already has to happen. So this is not making it better, but that is currently happening on that street.
So that's currently happening. So with the narrower width and parking still on the other side,
Mhm.
there'll be a lot more stopping for somebody to come the other direction. Okay.
I think it would be the same actually, because the 2 feet doesn't stop someone from, if a car
Right.
comes down one lane and the car's parked, you have to stop and
Okay.
wait someone comes around, you sort of get behind the parked car, they drive by, then you drive out.
Okay,
Cutting 2 feet off the cartway doesn't change that.
Okay.
You're still, it's the same thing, and these are only 30 to 40 feet long, so they're not the entire length of the road.
okay.
So it's just walking that occurs every day, anytime.
Who would upkeep these?
Public Works.
Does Public Works currently upkeep our?
Not well
clubhouse?
enough, but we need to get them trained on GSI. This actually would require, we would get them certified in green infrastructure. We currently have only one green infrastructure installation right now, and that's down in the park. Aside from like the rest of them are gray infrastructure, so we would get them certified.
Okay, because that's my concern, that clubhouse looked great last year, this year they looked sad.
That's kinda nice to have that certification for the crew. They.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Do they, so the native plantings are nice and the selection there is nice, but do they have to be, you mentioned that they would be lower anyways, but is there how low can they be? That might be something we want to kind of talk about, because I know sometimes taller ones look nice, but also it does, in front of residential areas, it does make it harder for people to walk like through them, or if you're parking near one, like
Yeah.
parking's on the other side, but people also have their trash bins to put out. Being able to get through them and not have them so densely planted might be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, with the selection or the species on there, I mean, we can switch those up. These ones aren't set in stone. They were just kind of recommendations based on some other projects. And I know we had kind of sent them over and talked to Jim and Larry about them a little bit. But I mean, there's always flexibility to change those as well, along with the spacing on them.
Part of the intent with some of this shrubbery is for identification. Right, if you're driving, you want to see it. So if they're too low, you may not see the structure, the GSI. So keeping it up in eye level, for a driver is, we think that's important. But that doesn't mean that there can't be less of them. One at each end, one in the middle. And the idea of walking through, people can do whatever they want, but it's designed to walk around, that it's not that far. That's why they kept them small, so that you can walk around. There's still room for garbage pails, at each of the driveway entrances and the determinations of each of the GSI cells.
I mean, I guess it's good we didn't go with the giant garbage cans.
So the runoff currently, where is it flowing down to?
All the runoff in that neighborhood currently flows down to existing inlets on Steuben. There are no existing inlets along Oregon or Lincoln, where all of this funnels down to.
And how much runoff do we expect this to remove from the combined system?
These ones specifically, I can't recall how much these ones are going to remove in terms of the overall source reduction along with the separation project. They are obviously removing less of a percentage than the separation, but that's why the separations cost a lot more as well, because it's more infrastructure with inlets and storm sewer.
What's the cost for this project?
562,000.
Is this the section that Chief Crown had some concerns with initially?
Yeah, and this is the one we met with him and he drove it and he made some suggestions on limiting two parking away from corners on those two turns on Dakota and Montana. But otherwise was not concerned.
And that was primarily for EMS and fire to be able to make that turn without having to hit into them or something. Okay.
Correct.
And each one of these looks like they're about the width of a property. Is that correct? Where they're.
Yeah, I think a
located?
lot of them were between 30 to 40, 45 feet or so. Before they were much longer, but That's why we kind of cut them down for impacts, driveways, a lot of that stuff that I previously mentioned.
In terms of costs, this is based on your recommend, like the most affordable option for the work that we have to do for the GSI work, right? Like it's the best option for this work.
Yes, because we ran through, like I said, those first couple renditions with Richmond Street and with Noble. And we ran actual cost estimates on those, and then when we met with Alpasan and pared them down, we reran estimates on those. And we had continuously been looking at the overall model with the separation projects and with the GSIs to see the highest cost per gallon removed that we could. And this is essentially where we landed on the most efficient option.
The real reason for these are the sort of the touch up to get the total flow, try to maximize the separations. You're there, you get as many inlets as you can, and we beat that to death. And you couldn't get the whole removal quantity out. So, you know, instead of going back up in some other neighborhood and doing a separation project, which is expensive, unless you're getting a ton of flow, like we are in the projects that Scott spoke about. So we needed that smaller amount of flow. So these lesser performing, lesser cost options made sense. They fit.
And when you say that percentage, there is a number we have to hit for all of this work. So it was like the big project gets us to a certain point, and we had to make up that difference to hit the goal that we've been mandated to hit.
Correct.
Okay.
So if we were to nix this, we would miss mandate number.
Correct. And we're not asking for approval right now. This is still we're waiting for the funding to come back from, we've already applied, right? And we're waiting. Submitting in December, that's right. Okay. And we'll know, I thought we were gonna know in December. Did they change that? Is that what you just said? They moved it back?
Yeah, isn't the submittal, the application?
Yeah, the final submittal was December 31st, which we're gonna resubmit the plans to them for like final review. But obviously, we're still working through design renditions and obviously talking with the fire chief and, you know, presenting here. So we didn't want to pull the trigger on sending it to them yet. But
Do you remember when the announcements are next year? We just changed all the schedule. March.
Members application March is the mid-cycle announcement.
Okay, and this, what's the duration of construction on this project? Will we have how long to build these?
when they get into it,
Yeah.
I mean, we were anticipating, yeah, it was gonna be a quick burn. I mean, based on like the locations of them, each of them, you know, a month or two. Well, no, I mean, based on like each location of like for all of them, they'd be like a month or two and like each location kind of moving around.
Location meaning street?
Yes.
Okay.
So 3 to 5 months-ish. So your deadline is the end of 2025 to comply with the consent order to have all your projects installed. So if you get approval in March, if you wait for the grant approval in March, then there's still enough time. Well, it takes 2 months to bid, so it would be bid starting in May, and so, you know, it would start to get close.
Yeah.
You could always bid these before you get the grant approval, since you have to do them anyway. But yeah, you can figure that out later.
So we would know in March what
grant-
amount Alcoasand will reimburse us for,
Correct.
what percentage they'll cover.
Correct.
Oh,
And we moved our budget to only expecting a 36% return, just to, that's probably reasonable, you
You
would think?
typically get less.
Yeah.
Less than the actual separation.
oh, and you already moved
Less
that
than
percentage?
36?
I already moved it to 36.
budget.
You think, okay, what's that?
They get less than 85%.
Okay.
Max for a separation's 85. They won't tell us what the max is on a GSI, but it's less than 85.
Okay.
So I think the 36 is a good, is a good sort of estimate.
Okay, and that's what we did.
So I love these. These are really cool, great concept. but I hate them in this area. I really do not think that these roads are wide enough. We've already had residents on these roads complain about these. Can we look at other areas, other projects to get us that number? Without forcing us to vote yes on this to get that number?
You don't have to vote yes on anything today, but I don't know, do you have any comment on that?
We can look at other streets in the same neighborhood. If we go back to the first slide that Scott showed. The C20 area, drainage area is not that large, so it's that purple area. So everything where the pink or the blue and red lines are, that whole area is taken care of. So half of the area is done. The other half is to the east there, and you can see all we would be doing is putting these structures in other streets or other neighborhoods. So you'd move them from here to someone else's neighborhood, and it would just require new design, new evaluation, new design. I don't think there are really any large streets in Crafton, in the neighborhoods that would accommodate these any better. So it still meets the design standards for roadways, and it allows you to comply with your consent order in a cost-effective way. We could build separation projects for these neighborhoods, and as Craig mentioned, where his pointer is, let's say, for example, we drain that area, we come down on the Steuben, we would have to run a new sewer line from where his pointer was down to the green or to the blue line. That would all be a new storm line just to carry the flow from those areas. So it wouldn't be a very cost-effective design, and I don't know how much you would get from the Borough grants, because they rely on a low cost per gallon removed. So this would probably be a higher cost per gallon removed project if you did a separation. So those are essentially your choices, are the separations and then the green infrastructure.
One question. So, Dakota and Montana are not as much of an issue when it comes to the driving, right? They're really short roads. Yes, people have to, but you're not gonna have to do it for very long. Oregon is a longer road, and a lot of people travel down Oregon. The next road over is a one-way street, is it not? Noble?
We look at Noble.
Yeah,
And why was Noble? Because if in Noble, does Noble, for people who park there, I don't remember if it has parking on both sides. Is it? So it's only one side, and it's a 20-foot cartway too. What about moving the cells from Oregon, leave the Dakota and Montana, and move the ones to Oregon to Noble, which is a one-way street? I know there's still, I'm guessing, probably an additional $10,000 in engineering costs to make that happen.
Question, I'm like,
I mean, they spent $40,000 to date. And so on this project, so I'm just curious, what's the thought on that?
Well,
Was that looked at?
yeah, so we did look at Noble. Noble was a larger bump out along there, but what we tried doing was looking at like the areas to it, and that's why we ended up back at Oregon. Just because it was in close proximity to of the other two, like we were trying to keep them together and maximize drainage areas to them.
They're saying they don't want us to keep them together because there's other criteria more important, like Oregon is a busy road. Could we move back to Noble if we suffer with a small amount of increase in sort of mobilization costs? It might be worth it to accommodate, the traffic or the issues or the concerns that they're bringing up. So do you think we would be able to take the ones on Oregon and get that flow that we're removing and move it to Noble?
Can I just add, I mean, I live over there, cannot miss my fire engine red roof on Union Avenue, but Noble Avenue is arguably, I would say, busier than Oregon Avenue. Because you've got traffic from Union coming, you've got traffic from Center, from Cross, from
Right, but
potentially
you
Oregon.
don't have two-way traffic.
So you only have one.
So you only have
It's
one-way
only
traffic.
one way. Got it.
So
Oregon.
if you have a 20-foot cartway with parking, that is perfect. I mean, that's what you would want, right? Where the other one is a 20-foot cartway with two-way traffic and parking.
Got it. Okay.
Part of Thomas is one way as well, and Thomas includes purple.
I think Thomas is a lot flatter, though. It might not have the same issue. Thomas is the street at Foster. next to Foster, that street right there.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was looked at either.
Yeah, there was a project there. It's not GSI, but there was a project to remove flow from Palm Street. So it may already be cherry there.
Okay, okay.
Even though that is in C20?
Yes, it was already removed. Flow, the excess flow, the easy flow was taken from that area.
And the hope is wherever these, is the hope that it flows to Steuben. Yeah,
What? Oh, what?
the water, like it's these streets, even if it would move to Noble, it's still flowing to Steuben, and that's what we need. We need it to go to Steuben, right?
It's already going to students. So basically.
I mean, we couldn't pick a street, like I'm saying, like you wouldn't move it to Division.
Right, no,
That's-
it's
yeah.
gotta be in that purple,
Okay.
that purple outline is where so that's the sewer shed, so that's where all the
Okay.
sewer water, or I'm sorry, all the storm water. From that rain, any rain that hits that area
Okay.
flows down to the end.
I just was making sure, like, is it sticking to, like, I feel like those 4 streets? That's all.
It's just sticking to that purple
Purple,
area.
okay,
Yeah, the 4 streets is a cost efficiency.
okay.
How many were there on Oregon?
4.
4. So, okay, would it be possible to potentially split the difference and do half on Oregon more spread out and half on Noble?
Again, I don't know why, if we're gonna move them, and that would make construction more expensive. Because now
Split them?
because now you're mobilizing again. Where if you have everybody there, it'll be cheaper, and I think that solves the width problem that we have, that is, it's been by far, I've received emails and I've had visits from residents. And that was by far the biggest concern.
Yeah.
Well, and I agree, but my only concern is, again, we go back to, you can't please everybody. I can guarantee you're gonna be getting emails about Noble.
Sure, but it's a
Live on
different,
there,
but
so-
now you have 16, but you have,
I don't disagree. I'm just
yeah.
throwing it out as an idea, because if we're doing it, and don't get me wrong, I want to try to make everybody happy, but if we're doing it to appease people, we're gonna get complaints no matter where we put them. That's just my point. I agree that we need to make the right decision here, but I'm just saying, if it's too many in one area, then split, I don't know. That's my point. Is I think we just need to think about it more and hear what the people on the streets think.
Are there flooding issues in people's, and I don't know if anyone has the answer to this, you live over there, you might know about, are there flooding issues in people's houses and basements in that area? I know this is obviously going to help help deal with the stormwater flow throughout the entire area, but it'd be nice to know if it's also going to, have a marked impact on people's properties.
I have heard from residents that water does there,
Mhm.
because of the state of the brick streets there. Which in some cases are awful, it does not do what you would want it, it pools in certain places and things like that, but that's all I've heard. I don't have a detailed analysis of it.
Cause it is a residential street that only goes a few blocks, even if it gets more traffic. You've got to get in and out of that neighborhood, and there are only a few ways to do that, but. It is still a street that serves a residential neighborhood, and so if people do have to go slower and navigate, occasional waiting for someone to pass. Is it improving, is it helping avoid flooding in their properties, or is this just an overall reduction?
The only
On the
flooding,
street.
since I've been here, so a year and a half, 2 years, the only flooding issues that we've had were backups. Like
Okay.
were caused by sewer issues, not the structure or not the way it's set up, but that doesn't mean that other people haven't had different experiences. Craig, what would it take to analyze, to take a deeper look at Noble and see if it's feasible?
I mean, we could take a look at Noble if it's essentially replacing all the ones from Oregon.
Yeah.
Because with the ones on Noble, they can be wider than the ones that we have in all the other locations.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the problems though is the parking, if you're looking at this map, the parking's on the left. And on the right is where the cells would have to go. And if you look at the very bottom, there's a big parking lot right there.
Correct.
There's lots of driveways, when you go off the road, there's not gonna be a lot of spots for it. I mean, that's just seems what jumps out at me.
So-
Yeah. Oceans out there.
Can I ask too, would the water arguably have to flow from Noble to Steuben? Because once you're like on the other half of Noble towards the north, the top section, that slopes down, like you're
Right,
going
that purple
uphill.
line.
Well, you could actually,
Right,
the
you're going
purple,
uphill.
the purple line is the top of the hill. So the
Okay,
purple,
it's the top
every,
of the hill.
yeah, so the purple line
Okay.
is the flow area. So just imagine that everything on the opposite side of the purple line goes the other way.
Gotcha.
Everything on this side, so everything on Oregon Street and Lincoln Street goes down towards Steuben until you get past that purple line and then it goes towards Cross.
Okay,
That
makes
actually makes it even more obvious that the amount of space we'd have on Noble is much smaller.
Yeah, that's a
than
great,
the amount of
that was gonna
space
be my next
on
question,
Oregon.
and oh, sorry, go ahead. I didn't hear, I wasn't.
So I was just saying, reminding us to look at the lines makes it even more obvious that the amount of space that would be available on Noble Avenue is substantially less than the amount of space on Oregon to fit in those projects.
Yeah, but
because
the
of that
projects on Oregon don't go past that, the second street on Oregon. I don't know what, I forget the name of it, but that second street is, those projects don't even go to there.
Okay.
So, yeah, so there's still a little flexibility there.
And we could go back out and sort of loosen the priority of trying to group the cells together.
Yep.
That's less important. If a higher cost is okay to accommodate other requirements. We can leave this design intact. We'll have that as an option. Go back out, see what we can get rid of in Oregon. Or maybe push it further up north, in this direction anyway. Where there might be some more room, and then look at Noble as a combination. I don't know, did we look at Lincoln? It seems like, we may have looked at Lincoln as well, so.
We did, yeah.
We could find maybe 5 areas everywhere else except Oregon.
Well, here's,
That'd be everywhere.
and the other question, and the other option is, Oregon and Lincoln or Oregon could be changed to one way. That's another option. That's a
Do we know what
possibility.
Lincoln is right now? I think I'd know that.
Lincoln is two-way, Lincoln and Oregon are both
They're
two-way.
both two ways, okay.
Yep. But that would obviously be a conversation with the residents on those streets.
That impacts a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yep, that affects a lot of people.
So we could do that. So what we could go back, Craig could get you a budget estimate, go back out, we have some information already. Well, we still would go back out, walk the streets again with a different mindset, because if we're trying to consolidate, we're not looking at Lincoln too hard. But if we say, okay, let's get rid of the consolidation idea, and we can come back with as many as we could, not just the 5 from Oregon. We'll see all the possible locations. And then maybe if you want to sit there and pick, we put a value of removal on each one. We'll tell you need to get to a certain total. And you can select it. I mean, that seems cumbersome for you, but if you're up for that, we could go out and see as many as we could get in these neighborhoods. Now, once again, we haven't even talked about this, but if you zoom out, there are other neighborhoods to go to that we haven't even considered. It's at Grace Street or, further to the east. I don't know what streets those are.
I think so. I would say Grace is out. That's extremely tight.
Grace, yeah.
Morgan's tight.
That's not gonna work.
Grace is extremely tight.
Over to the right, that's Rogers Avenue. That thing's.
Yeah, that's
hard
up on
to drive.
top, so that's,
Josephine and
yeah.
Rogers.
yeah, those are up on the hill, that's up on the hill. That's pretty steep.
Those are
incline down.
very hard to drive on
Yeah.
at all.
And there's probably the other part of this, remember, is when we drew the big drainage area, but whenever you're doing a GSI, you draw the drainage area to that GSI.
Yeah.
If you're sitting up on the top of a hill,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get any area draining to the top of the hill, right?
Yeah.
So that would probably render those locations not very feasible in collecting a lot of water. So that was the other part of it, trying to find each GSI is draining as much area as we could get. So there's so many facets to it, but once again, we could go back now, loosen that restriction of trying to consolidate these and come back and see where some other locations would be.
If you had to guess, I'm just your opinion. It feels like, so we have these 3 streets, we've got these, I'm trying to use the appropriate terminology, these GSIs. What if, whatever that percentage you said we have to have, because we have to hit that mandated amount, how much would it be? I feel like we're just really, I agree, it feels like monopoly, like we're just literally like moving all these pieces around. How much would it just be to add on to like the separation? Like how, like if it's,
Oh,
I mean, is
a
it
lot.
like,
It's a lot, so.
okay, okay.
So that's-
More water. Now, the downstream pipes down Linden get larger.
Okay.
You're talking 5 to 10
Well,
million.
I didn't know what it would be because it feels as if this could be, it feels like a slippery slope. Like we're just gonna keep, because it makes sense, right? We want to find the best streets for it, but I feel like every street is going to have its own unique issues.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I really loved the idea of Noble. I thought one way makes perfect sense to me, but when you zoom in, like, will it work? And if we're gonna just space them out, it feels like, well, let's put one there versus it's already concentrated. Put the work in. If we keep going around, I'm worried about what it's gonna cost. And I feel like every time we do a new plan, it is gonna cost.
Yeah,
more.
we'll get a work off for this, so we'll know what this additional work will cost ahead of time. I would, hopefully we can keep it as simple as, like make sure that this, do the easiest look first. Like, don't go walk the neighborhood until you've looked at a map and said, will these even fit at all? Right? Like, let's do it as, and then once you figure that out, then you step down and do a little bit more. So we can keep it as this exploration as cheap as possible. My recommendation would be explore Noble as as inexpensively as possible.
Mhm.
If that doesn't pan out, or if that doesn't pan out, then we look at doing Oregon, and then my suggestion would be if you install it and it doesn't, and it does cause issues, then you switch this road to one way. I mean, that's a possible solution.
So
Yeah.
this may be a really bad idea too, and obviously this would all have to go through much more discussion and consideration and discussion with residents. But if we think that maybe doing some one-way swaps might be something that we'll get to, I wonder if we could consider like Oregon and Lincoln, if they were to be one way each, but not from Steuben, only the back part of the neighborhood. You could still get in and out of the neighborhood from Steuben in both directions. And we can look at the map for this, but it'd be nice to see if we could locate these projects in a way that we didn't have to turn the first block off of Steuben into one way.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So that the people first off.
So you
have
could
to
go
drive
in
extra
and then
mile.
only within the residential blocks off of Steuben, there might be a one-way loop. And I don't know if the projects would be able to be clustered that way, but it would be nice to try.
Yeah, I think the engineering is the cheap part, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the construction. Construction is 10 times engineering cost, so that's, to me, that's the concern. But what we could do is we've already done some of this, which I just said, look at the big picture and then zoom in. So we'll go back out of that, and we'll, I think we do the quick street walks. It's nothing better than, there's a problem with the sidewalk, because you heard, there are low spots that pond water that we put the intake for the GSI. So it doesn't pond water. So there's nice efficiencies that can come out of these things. But in any event, we'll get you a budget estimate for that. If it's too much, we'll cut it back, whatever. And then we'll show what these reductions are, flow reductions. So we can look at the combination, and then unless we find an obvious solution or resolution based on the new criteria. And if not, then we'll come back and say, well, these are the options. And that way you can at least tell the folks on Oregon that you did spend more money, do a more thorough evaluation, looked at other areas, and it didn't work because of this or that, or maybe it will.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Works for me. Sounds like we have our marching orders.
All right, thank you, Craig.
Thank you. All
We're gonna have these guys take off on this big round.
right, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, I know it's not our time to talk. But I live on Oregon. Okay, and I don't just live on Oregon, I live on a cross street that's part of it. And what you don't realize is Nevada has no curves whatsoever. And it looked like you got 2 or 3 just on that cross street. Why can't you take out the middle section of grass between the curb and the sidewalk?
That is included. That is taken out.
All right, you can't tell from the drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point of the fact is that have you really taken the time to know what kind of an inconvenience it's gonna people to live there? We don't see any ponding whatsoever. The only ponding we've seen on Oregon was down next to the church. That's the only place, correct?
I don't know. I don't know where the person who I was talking to was, I don't know that they told me where, they just were generic that they had funding. Yeah.
That's basically it. It's just that we're talking about changing our way of life and how we do things. And it's not that I'm against it, I just want to see a better reasoning why you're doing it. Because where we live at, we don't have the ponding. And none of the residents there that we talked to through Oregon ever see any ponding.
So ponding's actually not part of the design. I was mentioning getting rid of small ponding areas on the street. If there are none, it doesn't matter. These still need to be built in order to comply. They don't have to be built here, but these need to be built in order to comply with the consent.
Okay.
That's the one thing I was misleading you and thinking that that's part of the
No, I
design.
understand what you're saying. I really
So
do.
it was just drainage spots if there was ponding.
Well,
No, I think I do want to make, we've spent a lot of time on this, and we do want to hear your comments, and we, wanted to keep that in, especially when the engineers are here, but I think we've all discussed, we're going to continue doing some research and have them look at other alternatives. And then we'll take more time for discussion at the end, but thank you for sharing, since you live within that area. And the engineer there's still a fair amount on the agenda, so I want to make sure that we have time for all that. So let's continue with the agenda for now.
The next item is the Station Street retaining wall. This is in reference to the existing retaining wall along Station Street, particularly by Division at that corner. The wall has shown signs of failing. We're in the process of getting this fixed. The survey has been done. Waiting to hear back from that. Expected to get that by early next week. The survey will be used for the base map and then eventually for the design of the new wall. Next is the police station garage basement. This is in reference to the deteriorating concrete condition of the basement, support beams and walls. We did have a structural engineer come in and do an inspection. There was a report received, but we are expecting to get a proposal from him regarding continuing work on the design and fixing the problem. The last item is in regards to the natural gas work that has been going on in the community. It's no longer upcoming. It's been ongoing for a while. I'd just like to mention that I have reached out to People's Natural Gas regarding their communication with the residents. They did inform me that they were supposed to send out robocalls and letters, and just want to apologize to all the residents that were affected by this. I asked them about it, and they said that their system wasn't perfect. I had then asked, well, if it's not perfect, can you resend the robocalls and letters? And they never got back to me after that. So in exchange for that, we resorted to our own means and methods using social media savvy to let the residents know of the work going on. We do plan on using this moving forward with any large permit application projects that come in, so that we don't rely solely on the utility. And our due diligence to let residents know, we will use our own means and methods through social media, Facebook savvy, to let residents know of the upcoming work, to give them the best awareness moving forward. And we'd also like to note that we do consider shutting down utility companies that do start works before their scheduled start dates. So hopefully moving forward, we will have better methods in place for letting residents know of ongoing work in the community.
What methods do we have to ensure or to, hold them accountable for sending out those notifications? Is that something we're still exploring, or do we know that we do have some?
No, after the fact, we don't have much recourse. Before the fact, though, we can shut them down. So if we find that they've been working, either before the date that they told us they were gonna start working, which is what happened this time, a full week before, we can shut them down. And I tell you what, you shut one of those projects down for a day where they have, thousands of dollars on the line, it probably won't happen again. So that's gonna be our goal. When we see one of these larger projects come in, if they pull this on again, we'll shut them down for a day. Because we can shut them down until their start date. If they've applied for a permit, and put a start date down and they start before that date, we don't have to allow them to continue work.
Have we told them that we will do that next time, so they know that there is no?
We are going to inform them of that now, but we
Okay.
have not informed them of that yet.
But we will.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
They got their one get out of jail free card.
Yep.
And that's the only one they get.
That's.
And
yep.
what about the resident notifications and robocalls? If they're supposed to do that and they're not doing it? What
That-
kind of accountability measures are we
Good
able
question.
to take?
I'm not sure. Steve, I don't know if you have.
I would file an informal complaint with the Public Utility Commission about their inability to follow the rules. They'll
There you go.
follow the rules after that.
Okay, we can follow with the PUC.
Yeah, I've had good success with them following the rules after they get turned in.
There you go.
So will we do that in this case?
Yeah, there's a form online you can fill out. And I'm happy to help if you need.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking to it. We'll do it this time. I mean, they started work a full 10 days before they said they were going to, so.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be more than happy to pursue that.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, there's no other questions regarding any items mentioned. That concludes the engineer's report for this evening.
Thanks, Larry. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Should we move on to the manager's report?
Yep, okay, so zoning update, planning commission had their October meeting earlier this week on Tuesday. They are currently looking for a solicitor for their work, and their next meeting will be November 19th. And then any further discussions, forums, or meetings will be planned as needed before the revised draft is prepared for community review. So that's continuing to move forward. The next item on my agenda is the Tarco leaf vac. This has been on the agenda a few times. But we had to check on some things. So I would like to get approval to purchase the Tarco Windy 100 leaf vac and cap for $101,000, $765. And 65,000 of that is coming from a state grant. And so we do have an extension on that. So I'd like a motion to approve the purchase of a Tarco Windy 100 leaf vac for $101,000 and $765,000 for Public Works.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just to confirm, the remaining 36,000 some change was budgeted for in this year's budget, correct?
Not all of it, but we did have it was budgeted for $80,000, but we incorrectly budgeted a lease in that same fund that saved us $50,000. So we're in good shape.
Cool, thank you. I'm sorry.
It's indirectly budgeted.
Yes.
And when do you expect that purchase would occur?
You know when delivery would come?
I don't know.
I don't think it's immediate. I think
Yeah.
it's probably a few months out at least.
So we won't have it
Okay.
for this
No.
leaf season.
No,
Okay.
Do it tomorrow. Does it have a use after that? Or is this something,
Oh, we
what are the,
Chipper. We use it.
we-
This is by far the most popular program that we run. They can get more calls and more asks for this service than anything else we do.
but like if it comes in the January, February, like what are the months of uses?
You also use it you'll use the box for chipper service, And so part of this will be used all next year.
All year.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And then the next item of mine is just an update on the budget process. We had our fourth budget workshop today before the meeting. We have two more, we have three budget workshops scheduled. And we are probably going to advertise for just to pass it at the December 12th council, but just so you know, that proposed budget is on the website. You just go to the finance page, you can see the proposed budget, you can play with the decisions, you can control it. It's projected out 5 years with no tax increase. So that's good news. And we hope to pass it. We'll advertise it and probably we'll hope to pass it at the December 12th meeting just for timing purposes. That allows us to advertise it in the cheaper paper. So that's all. That's concludes my report.
All right, thank you. We'll go on to the standing committees report, starting with finance, administration, and sustainability. We still have Mayor Perry online.
Yes. I actually will ask the manager if there is anything that has come up since our last meeting that should be noted. I don't think there is.
No, there's not. I think the only note is, I think EIT taxes were above what we thought they would be, so that was good.
Yes.
There were other major changes. Yeah.
No, okay. I just didn't know if there was anything since we had that meeting. So we did have a meeting last week, went over current year to date, looking at how some of that might affect not only this year's budget, or whether there were any things that we needed to reconsider. And basically there really are no big surprises or anything that is substantially out of what was anticipated. So at this point, we're in pretty good shape for year to date. That's about it.
All right, thank you. We'll go to the Infrastructure and Land Use Committee. That is me. On the agenda, we have the Linwood and Noble Parks update. We have been talking in the past few meetings about the grant we received a few years ago that required a match, 50% match, that we hoped we would get through other grants, and we haven't gotten those yet. We'd also gotten some updates from the state who gave us the grant from DCNR that they wanted to tighten the ways we could use it slightly. So we were reaching back out to try to keep the terms of the original agreement. I don't have any updates since our last council meeting.
And we forgot to talk about this earlier.
I did reach out to the DCNR project manager who I'm dealing with on this, and they did reassure me that we could spend the money towards both parks.
Oh,
okay.
In accordance to the grant agreement.
Great. So that means we could do the work on one and match with the other.
Okay. I think that'll have to continue to be discussed in council then, particularly as we go through our budget talks, because being able to spend the money on both parks is good. That was what we initially wanted, upgrades to 2 parks. But that does not solve the problem that we did not get additional grant money. So we still would have to pay the 50% match. So,
right. But this is
that'll
budgeted in the bond fund, just so you know. This has been accounted for in the bond fund.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you have to spend it.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, that's a good update. That was all for my committee. So we'll move on to the planning commission updates. Mr. Riddell.
All right, so Jim already went over most of my stuff.
Sorry.
No worries. Just to recap, our next meeting is November 19th at 6:30 here in the council chambers. Thank you.
Right, and thank you to you and the planning commission who've been kept very busy lately. We appreciate all of the effort of our committee members. Communication and Recreation Committee, Ms. Bolenbacher. Are you able to talk?
Good evening. Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so our trunk or treat happened last weekend. And in conjunction with the spectacular golf, they raised 2 bags of food and over $300 for the Crafton Ingram Food Bank. I unfortunately was not able to make it. I was out of town, but Mayor Perry was there. So I did ask her if she would be willing to give us some detail about what actually went on. So Mayor, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was able to park my broom down there for the entire event and give out candy. Everybody had, I think, a great time. Again, our rec board is just to be commended for the work they do to come up with these events and to, I see the same faces smiling and working hard to make these events work. And I think for the first event, there was a vendor who said that she had made up about 200 individual bags, and she said she thought she maybe had about 20 or so left. So we probably had maybe about 150 youngsters come through. Parents, a lot of parents even dressed up, and everybody seemed to have a good time. I talked with a lot of the vendors who were there, who were giving out candy and had other wares or things that they were displaying, and they were all very, very happy with the event as well. So fun was had by all, and I'm looking forward to next year.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And that also kicked off our Haunted Crafton Tour, which is running now through October 31st. I wanted to thank the Blue Snail as well as Michelle Anker from Howard Hanna. They donated some prizes this year for the tour. So basically, while you take the tour, there's a little quiz that you can take along the way. And then you submit your answers to the quiz. And at the end of the tour, they will choose a few people to win some prizes. So if you would like to take the tour and potentially win some prizes, you just need to go to the Borough website. They ask you do make a monetary donation of your choice. There's no set amount. And that, again, money will go to the Crafton Ingram Community Food Bank. So everybody go check out the tour. It's pretty cool. Also in conjunction with this is our trick-or-treating here in Crafton. It will occur on Thursday, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. And the last weekend for our spectacular mini golf is this weekend, Friday and Saturday, October 25th and 26th. It will be from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. weather permitting, and it'll be $2 per round. Bear with me one moment here. I just lost my notes because a cat walked over my computer line. Sorry about that. Give me one moment here. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. House sitting for a friend. All right, up next is our Crafton Celebration of Lights. That's going to occur on Saturday, December 7th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We are going to kick the night off with some music from the Joyful Noise a cappella singing group. Then Nightlight DJ will play holiday music throughout the rest of the evening. You can come meet Santa, as well as Mrs. Claus and the Snow Princess. There will also be a pirate there walking around making some sword balloons for the kids. There will also be a craft station for the kids to make some crafts, and the Hot Buns food truck will be there to give away hot chocolate and other treats. There are more plans in the works, so more details to come. We also have our holiday house tour coming up on Sunday, December 15th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we are currently accepting applications for homes to be part of the tour. So again, please go to the Borough website to sign up. We do have many more community events happening. So please, again, go to the Borough website and click on the calendar to see everything else that's happening in Crafton. And just one last reminder is to go out and vote. Tuesday, November 5th, voting polls are open from, I believe, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So make sure you go vote. Our newsletter is just about done and is slated to be in the mailboxes about mid-November. So you should be seeing those in about 2 weeks. And that's it for my report. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And on to our last committee, the commission's vacancy, Ms. Polkownik.
Yeah, just an update. We, the Civil Service Commission, recently received a resignation of one of their, members. So we do have the Civil Service Commission seat, that would be expiring July 1st of 2026 available. So I encourage anyone who might be interested in being on that particular, commission to go to our website and apply, craftonborough.com/commissions. All of you can, it's an easy application process. So just, consider it for the Civil Service Commission. We'd love to have that full since, as mentioned, we are Civil Service Police Exam and they're a part of that. So would love to see some interest in the Civil Service Commission. And then I've mentioned it a few times in prior meetings, but we do have some upcoming seats becoming available for the Zoning Hearing Board. We'll have 2 openings. I believe they're full, a full seat, I guess you would say. They'll be expiring at the end of the year. So we'll have 2 openings for our zoning hearing board, as well as an alternate seat. So zoning hearing will be looking for some new members to join. But yeah, so civil service is the hot one. We'll get that out. It's on Savvy Citizen. But again, maybe another blast of that would be helpful to kind of spread the word. And that's it.
All right, thank you. And then a final committee update. It's back to Ms. Bollenbacher for the Council of Governments.
Thanks. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the last meeting. That was, I believe, last week. And also nobody else was able to attend either. And I have not yet received the email with the minutes from the meeting. So I have no update for you other than the fact that the next meeting will be held Thursday, November 21st at 6:30 p.m. in Green Tree. So again, as always, if anybody would like to join me, please let me know so I can RSVP for us both. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. So we are moving on to community announcements. Before we go to our public comment, I think all the community announcements have been covered at this point, but we'll do a recap. Our next council meeting will be Thursday, November 14th. 7 p.m. as usual. And once again, we will start at 6 p.m. with a budget workshop that is open to the public. The 5th annual Haunted Crafton Driving Tour is currently ongoing and will continue through October 31st. Halloween, you can do it. It's self-paced. You can do it anytime. Find more information on the Crafton Borough website. The Spooktacular Mini Golf also open Fridays and Saturdays in October, from 7 to 9 p.m. for $2. Ms. Bollenbacher did a great recap of these just a few minutes ago. But here we are recapping again. Halloween will be observed on Halloween itself, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. And as usual, our police and volunteer fire department will be on patrol to enforce the safety of those participating. And they do a great job with that. So appreciate their presence. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. All day, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please confirm your polling location. Celebration of Lights will be Saturday, December 7th, 6 to 8 in Crafton Park with a whole slew of characters that Ms. Bollenbacher shared, including Santa and Mrs. Claus. And the Holiday House Tour will be Sunday, December 15th. And you can get advanced tickets at the library, Fig Tree Coffee, the Blue Snail gift shop, or from the borough office. And with that, we will move to public comment. At this time, citizens may address Crafton Borough Council on any issue. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before the council, who may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Council has the option to respond or not at the end of the address. The solicitor is the assigned timekeeper. As always, please state your name and physical address for the record. So we'll start with those in the room. Do we have any public comment from attendees this evening? Start with this gentleman.
Ladies, gentlemen, how are you? Mike DeBona. I live at 47 Oregon Avenue. Just one question, because it's really, I'm not against any of this. I'm just curious about it because there's a lot of cross streets that are involved. Okay. And some of those don't have curbs. So I don't know where they're gonna put these unless they come on my property to do that. Little discerning. So also a little discerning that anybody would allow a two-way street to be cut down even by 2 feet. Okay, especially right now when it's not one way. If we go one way, that's completely okay with us. It's just the idea that we don't want to go through the aggravation. Not so much during the springtime or the summer or the fall, but in the wintertime, it becomes really a major hassle. But the one thing I want to ask, and I'll just let you go, is can I get a drawing on where all of these are going to be placed?
Yeah, I can, before you leave tonight, I can give you
Can you do
I'll
that?
have to go print it out, but
It's like I said, I'm right on the corner of Oregon and Nevada.
yeah, I can
Okay.
get you a drawing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Can I perhaps suggest a minor addition to that? I think those drawings were a little hard to read.
Yeah,
Could we perhaps make available a version that has it overlaid on a screen back aerial? Perhaps,
just to make it.
I don't know if everyone else had that feedback, but I found them very hard to read without knowing any context. Like that might help people, myself included,
I agree.
know what it's showing.
Mhm.
We won't have that for you tonight, but I think we can have that
That's something.
prepared.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll put it on the website too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. With some clarifications that these are not yet final, not approved, not yet voted on.
I will, it'll be all over.
Our next comment.
Hi, I'm Greg Wozniak, 1773 Bar Avenue. To that fella's point,
That's, just, I want to double check that is it on? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
anyway, to the fellow's point that on these projects, if we could do like conceptuals, a lot of conceptuals with the infrastructure committee, so that we're not diving into real detailed project engineering and start saving money on just doing some conceptuals, and then have the public involved in some of those conceptuals. Get some conceptuals out there, get some public opinion, and get some and see, especially these projects that do affect residents a lot. And another one, I'll get back on my Brick Streets crate, but if we could somehow be more proactive about protecting our brick streets during these projects. I know that we have, they're going to replace them with brick, but there's a lot of trucks that go onto other streets around these projects that are brick, and they're really damaging the roads. So if you could have it written in the contract that we're being proactive, weight limits, where they can go, where they can turn around. It's just that we need to be proactive. We don't need to be destroying what we already have. So I think it'd be a great idea if it was written into the contract and there are penalties for not going by the contract. And this way, tell the contractors that right up front, so that if they have to tell you, yeah, it's another $10,000 and whatever it is, but it's a lot cheaper than having to fix our brick streets. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, and we can keep discussing that. I have not hit the button. We can keep discussing that, and we have already discussed that before, so that's a good reminder to make sure that it makes it into contracts moving forward.
Yep.
So, no concern. Next comment?
Hi, Mike. My name is Tom Gralowski. I live at 23 Lincoln Avenue, and it's actually the corner of Lincoln and Dakota. And one of the planned curb bump outs is right across the street from where I look out my window. And one thing I want to mention is I appreciate all the work done by Gateway. It's pretty, they've done some substantial stuff. They've looked at grading. I don't know if they were there during any rainstorms or any rains to look and see where the water really goes. But my impression is not all of it goes down the you call it the curb gutter or something like that. Some of it goes down the middle of the street, which won't get touched by any improvements we might make along the side. So that's just an open question comment for Gateway's analyses, which are pretty slick, by the way. Another thing I want to ask about for the curb bump outs is, when you make a curb bump out and that'll impact the way the water does flow along the curb. And it by the nature of how they're going to be designed at the driveways, it does seem like that's going to direct water away from the curb gutter. So it's kind of like a, I don't know the science behind these things, but it seems like it's almost self-defeating to have water diverted away from a device that's supposed to catch it. So maybe it will work, I don't know. Another comment I wanted to ask about is under other kind of applications, there are such things. There's different kinds of permeable pavement where you can actually embed, if you will, like an open-ended block kind of device in the street instead of bricks, fill it with stones, drainage things. And you could maybe get the same square footage of access to some type of water retention or water capture device. Like, I don't know what these GSI things are, or if they're certain designs that have been certified by the EPA or whatever, but it does seem like if it's a problem with curb bump outs, there might be an alternate way to look at it and not do the curb bump out, but you still get the same water retention. And I guess my last comment is $562,000 is it's a high price, it seems, for making a change that's just going to get us to the bonus of getting a grant or whatever that is. It seems like a lot. It seems like a lot of money. And if it's really a small percentage of the total, then maybe we ought to look at another location in the zone or another way to achieve that. That's all I got.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I can take two of those questions. One was, I think Craig mentioned that the water will go back out into the street. That's only in pretty extreme situations. That's in a more robust storm. Most of the storms that wouldn't happen. That's correct, right? Like most of the storms, like 90% of them probably that wouldn't happen.
Maybe
Or
less.
maybe less. Okay.
They're more designed for the 1 inch or
Right.
less.
Okay.
Storm rain events.
Okay. And the water already runs along the curb line. This would put it back out on the curb line when it exits, correct?
And yes, but I was thinking he was talking about when the curb comes out, when it bumps out.
Oh.
It creates 2 feet.
Oh.
He's thinking the water's gonna come down the curb and be stuck in the bumped out area.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually the opening of the GSI. So the water comes in, the curb is depressed there, the water goes into the GSI structure, then the curb goes back out and around.
So to clarify my comment, I was maybe specifically talking about right by an existing driveway. So we're gonna do like a transition 45-degree or something to the.
It'll be depressed there.
So it's gonna be below the road surface.
It'll be flush with the road surface. So the water will be flowing on the road at the curb line, and then it will flow into the GSI.
So there's not a 6-inch curve.
Not on the front.
Street.
Not everywhere. So it'll be 6-inch curbs and then cutouts, and then a 6-inch curb and then a cutout. So water will be able to flow into it.
So maybe, sorry.
Well, okay, we'll take turns. I think that responding to both comments, I think this should be more covered in more depth at our next infrastructure committee. And I don't know if we'll have Gateway in attendance for that. I imagine we probably will, especially if we have some updated locations to look at.
Yeah.
I would like to have at that committee meeting, we can look at the idea of getting a really good sense of what they might look like and helping to put together some visuals, maybe some 3D images that would show or kind of figure out via whether we can do modeling or photos or a mixture of both, get some better visuals that'll help us understand how some of those details will work in our context. That's my thought in response to both comments. Let's have that on the agenda for our next committee meeting. And then Mr. Adilla.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So since there's no curb on those bump outs, it'd be easier for a resident to run it over.
No, it's only in little spots. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we need better drawings.
Yeah, we're gonna try to.
There was a
He had
picture
some-
of it, yeah.
He had some photo examples.
Right, actually, the pictures at the end from Bellevue, that's what you want to show.
Yeah, because you can see it on the pictures. It is like a little
Show the
dip
Bellevue
down.
pictures all the way.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in?
Okay, so there will be some curbing,
Uh-huh.
but there will be lower areas, okay.
The openings correspond to where the water has been, where the flow directs the water in.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so that would be a typical entrance, like on the curb, it would be on the curb line and it would be open, but then there would be still a curb there further out.
Okay, thank you.
That was a good idea.
One question. My phone.
Can you come up to the mic just for the benefit of all those listening online?
Yeah.
But perhaps, well, we have more online now.
Thank you.
Yep.
My, and this will be my last one again. So the brick streets in our area, I know Lincoln, Dakota, Oregon, Montana. They're kind of wavy and bumpy, so not all the water goes to the side. And the design, let's say, would work better if you had a normal berm on the roads. But is there a plan to fix the streets so they're more normal? So that this design would be more effective?
That is a great question. We are absolutely starting that process. It's a long process to assess all of the different brick streets and figure out, because replacing a brick street with a brick street is incredibly expensive. We've done a survey that most residents want them, so some 70% want them, plus 70+%, but nobody wants to pay for them. So we're trying to do them as inexpensively as possible by doing what Greg says first, which is protecting them. We do have a quote for a repair up on Middle Street, at the entrance of Middle Street. But we need to do a thorough assessment of all the brick streets. And that is something that we plan to do next year. And then you have to make the decision of what brick street is probably not feasible to replace if it's in too bad of a shape. And what does it look like to save up the money to completely restructure that one? And then with the ones that you can pretty easily replace patches and fix them, then you do that. But we have to get to that. We have to know what that is. So the first step is to do a thorough assessment and to understand what that is. And we're basing that off of, we're using a guideline of what PennDOT did in Mount Lebanon with their streets, and figure out but we just started getting even assessments. But even just the small patch of doing one intersection on Middle Street is $30,000. And so 32,000, sorry.
Clearview Avenue.
Oh, right, on Clearview, right, sorry. It's not technically on Middle, but it's at where Middle meets Clearview Avenue. And so we're working on starting that assessment. No idea what that's gonna look like in the future. So I don't know what we're gonna be able to save and when they're gonna be fixed. We're just starting, so it's at the very beginning.
And Crafton's doing that assessment, or?
Well, we don't know yet. We're gonna start with how much can Larry do, and could we have an in-house engineer? How does it make sense? Or is that something that beyond his scope and something we have to hire somebody for? We have to get there. We're not there yet. So we're just starting that process.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks. Move in another comment?
Linda Wozniak, 1773 Bar Avenue. I'd like to remind, especially the borough manager, that the brick streets don't cost 3 times an asphalt street. Those brick streets are 100 years old and they have not been milled or asphalted in the 100 years they existed. So that's kind of a misnomer when you say it costs 3 times as much. To protect them, it doesn't cost much, but some preparatory planning. But keeping them in good condition is imperative. So we have to look at the streets near me have been asphalted several times. And I think this year's estimate to asphalt 6 streets was over 300,000. So we have to consider all the aspects of it.
Yeah.
Not just that these brick streets are expensive to repair, and they are. So the most important thing is to keep them in good condition, and we won't see the recurring costs of milling and disposing of that asphalt and re-asphalting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Can you come up to the microphone just for the sake of those listening online at the record?
No, that's.
My question would be for Gateway. How much of the street will you be taking up to do these bump outs?
Just the, am I answering the?
Yeah.
But you can, yeah,
Just
please do.
to, just the length of the bump outs. Just the length.
Well,
of the-
I've
of the
done,
steps.
I've done a lot of work on roads, especially brick, Boreopolis and a number of different places. And you're not just taking out just the bump out.
Yeah, I don't mean precisely the limits. There might be a 2-foot border around where the brick would then be relayed.
Relayed again. Well, that's what I'm saying is if that's happening and you're taking up 1/6 of the street, what would it be to fix the rest of it?
A lot.
So we
It's
can,
$25 a square foot to repair brick.
we can maybe be prepared with some more numbers and as we get this closer to construction.
That
but
was just curiosity,
Mhm.
because if he's gonna be if they're gonna be taking up, the contractor's gonna be taking up that much.
Mhm.
Okay, why not go a little bit further and fix the roads, especially on Oregon and Lincoln? I mean, we're talking about, roller coaster.
I'm not an expert in this, so I don't want to say that I am. I think we should do a bit of research to be able to respond to this better next time. But I think we also want to be realistic when we're talking about doing, a little bit of work along the curb and then replacing the brick versus taking up the road and putting it back so that it's curved and more appropriately. That's more than just replacing the brick. That's doing a fair amount of reconstruction underneath as well. So we would have to be considering all of those costs. So we just need to be, realistic in explaining what the potential cost and amount of level of effort impact would be. So we can have some better research prepared as we take these ideas forward.
It would be worth the effort just to find out
Yeah.
exactly what it would take. But anyway, that was my
Yeah.
comment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from those in the room? All right. I think we will, not out of time, but we'll go to those online and see, do we have anyone online who would like to make a comment? Public comment from anyone online? No?
There's no hands raised.
All right, well, this is last call then. Anyone at all, public comment? Otherwise, I think thank you all for joining us this evening. We had a lot of long discussion, a lot still in progress, and we will call meeting adjourned 9:02.
Thank you.